Hello again, everyone. I am Braun-Duin, and I am bringing to you a fine deck tech on the Modern Infect deck. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this sweet deck, and I'm going to start out with probably the most classic Infect creature. I'm talking, of course, about Noble Hierarch, which doesn't have Infect actually, but uh, Noble Hierarch does some really awesome things in this deck. Despite not actually having Infect, as I mentioned, it basically serves as both an accelerator and a pump spell all in one. So it's actually just very good in this deck. It lets you play like a turn 2 Blighted Agent or Plague Stinger and then still keep up like a pump spell or a protection spell if you need to. And the Exalted trigger is pretty relevant when you're trying to deal 10 poison damage to your opponent. Outside of Noble Hierarch, we have basically 16 infect creatures. We have these 12 creatures here, 2 evasive 2-drops, and then just the 1-drop Glistener Elf, which doesn't have evasion, but just by virtue of being a 1-drop is worth playing. And then we have 4 Ink Moth Nexuses, of course, which are very good in a deck like this because they dodge a lot of sorcery speed removal. And you can activate them at your leisure, so a lot of times you can dodge instant speed removal with them as well, depending on when you decide to go with them. As for the land base here, we have some fetches that will get us a Breeding Pool and some Overgrown Tombs. Breeding Pool is just for Blighted Agents, the only blue card in the deck, so there's just one copy. And Noble Hierarch also can produce blue, so there's a lot of ways to cast the Blighted Agents, but we just need one Breeding Pool since we can get it with our fetch lands. And then the Overgrown Tombs, we have Thoughtseizes, so we want more black sources than blue sources, which is why there's 3 of those, since we want the access to be able to play Thoughtseize on turn 1 if we need to. The other land is Pendelhaven, which if you're not familiar with Pendelhaven, what it does is it gives a 1/1 creature +1/+2. It is legendary, though, which is why you can only play 2 copies of it, because you can't just rely on it as a land source beyond the first copy. But it's very powerful in this deck for the same reason Noble Hierarch is. It's just a free pump spell that also doubles as a land. And then as for the rest of the deck, it's mostly just all pump and protection spells. We have Groundswell and Might of Old Crozar, which are both basically +4/+4 for 1 mana. They both require some small sacrifices, like you have to play Might of Old Crozar in your main phase, and you have to play a land to be able to Groundswell for 2. And then Rancor is just basically the most powerful pump in this deck because it allows you to keep attacking with high power creatures even through multiple removal spells. And then Mutagenic Growth is just free. A great way to save your guy from any kind of removal, like a Pyroclasm, for example. And then Giant Growth is just kind of the 9th copy of Might of Old Crozar and Groundswell. Typically worse than both of those, but sometimes not. And then for protection, we have 3 Thoughtseizes. And Thoughtseize doesn't necessarily seem like protection because it doesn't actually do anything to one of your creatures, but what it does do is strip a card from your opponent's hand that could disrupt your strategy. And then Apostle's Blessing and Vines of the Vastwood. Vines is an awesome protection spell because it doubles as a pump spell as well. And then Apostle Blessing is just kind of like the 5th Vines of the Vastwood that can also sometimes be very relevant because it lets you give a creature protection from a color and attack through blockers, something that Vines or these other pump spells don't actually accomplish. But this is the main deck. It's pretty streamlined, and it's just a bunch of Infect dudes and pump spells. And I'm going to talk a bit about the sideboard. Alright, so here's the sideboard. We have the 4th Thoughtseize. It's going to come in matchups, basically like other combo decks. Infect's kind of a combo deck, but other combo decks you're going to want to have a little added disruption that's not just creature related, as well as decks where they're going to try to kill all your guys or whatever, and you just want to strip a card from their hands. Nature's Claim is very good against Affinity, obviously, and there's some other decks that play a lot of artifacts that are worth killing. Hurgo's Recall, pretty much just for Affinity. With a deck like this, you can put a lot of pressure on your opponent and kill fairly quickly. So while Hurgo's Recall is not like a permanent answer to anything in the Affinity deck, it does buy you like a couple turns worth of time, which is pretty much all you need. Relic and Grafdigger's Cage are both like a small amount of graveyard hate, and they both have advantages that the other doesn't, so playing a mix is good. Spellskite is just additional protection, basically. Against decks that are just going to try to kill you with a lot of removal, especially decks that are playing things like Lightning Bolt, Spellskite's just a great answer to that deck because a Lightning Bolt doesn't kill a Spellskite, and it ensures that when you like go in on a poison guy, you're not going to get blown out mid-combat by like a Bolt or some other piece of removal. And an Apostle's Blessing, similarly, is just another piece of protection for decks like that. For Dismembers, these are going to come in against matchups where your opponent may have stuff like a Restoration Angel that's going to block your guy, or against like a Splinter Twin deck where you need to be able to kill their Deceiver Exarch in response to a Twin. There's just a variety of matchups where you need a very cheap piece of removal, and Dismember fits the bill. But this is the sideboard and deck for the Infect deck, and hopefully I will poison Todd out.